Unreal. Washington Commanders go into Detroit and beat the Lions 45-31. Unbelievable when you think about the Washington Commanders, sixth seed in the NFC, the number one seed Detroit Lions fall short. I mean, there was so much excitement in Detroit. What average ticket price? $855 to get into that game, and so it was high times in Detroit. But man, when you turn the ball over like the Detroit Lions did tonight, when you turn the ball over five times in the playoffs, it's very difficult to win. It's very difficult to have the success that you want when you turn the ball over like that. And that's what the Detroit Lions did. They turned the ball over five times. And you look at it, they turned the ball over three times in Commanders territory. So you turn the ball over three times in Commanders territory. You have five turnovers overall. One of the turnovers was a pick six that ultimately the Commanders returned for a touchdown. I mean, you can't win in the NFL in the playoffs when you turn the ball over like that. And the reality of it is, this was a shootout situation. And the thing is, the Lions blinked first because they turned the ball over, and they turned the ball over five times, three times in Commanders territory. You can't do that. You can't expect to win when you do that. And that's what happened. And you look at the Commanders. Commanders now move on to the NFC Championship game, could play the Rams, could play the Eagles. No matter what happens, they're going on the road. And I think if you're the Commanders, you'd rather play the Rams than the Eagles, because you don't even know what kind of home field advantage the Rams will have. They may have to play in Arizona. So who knows? But you look at this now, the Commanders and Jayden Daniels, he's magical. He's playing some magical football right now. He is magical. He is doing some amazing things right now. And the poise that he plays with is ridiculous right now. He's playing with a lot of poise, and so much poise that it's just like, wow, is this guy a rookie? Is this a rookie we're watching? Are we watching a rookie? Are we watching a seasoned vet, a polished veteran? Like, what are we watching here? I don't know, but I know what we're watching here is special. It's a special run that the Commanders are on. And I look at this team and I keep saying, I said this a couple weeks ago, there's something about this team that seems magical. The cardiac Commanders, they're winning, winning late. They're making comebacks. They're doing some special things. They had Hail Marys. They had a Hail Mary this year. They had five turnovers against the Eagles and still found a way to win. I mean, they are playing some ridiculous football right now, and they're playing some poised football, and they're getting the job done at a high level. And look, they're one game away from getting to the Super Bowl. 4 wins last year. You get Jayden Daniels with the second pick. Boom, you're in position now. Dan Quinn comes in, and now you're in position to possibly get to the Super Bowl. No one had the Washington Commanders going to the Super Bowl at the start of the season. And if you did, I hope you put the money down in Vegas, and I hope you're in position to win. You're possibly in position to win some big money. I hope you put that money down if you actually believe the Commanders we're going to go to the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. I do believe that the Eagles will win tomorrow. I think the Eagles will beat the Rams. And ultimately, I do believe that the Commanders will go to Philadelphia. And ultimately, I do believe that the season ends there. But who knows? I mean, that's just me speaking. I didn't think they beat the Lions today. So I look at the Commanders, and again, it's just magic. Only thing I could say, and the one thing I could say is magic. It's just magical when you come back the way they come back. When you go into Detroit and play the way they did today, it's magical. And that's what I'm seeing with the Washington Commanders. I'm seeing magic. Jayden Daniels has been magical. And I'm just seeing magic from this guy. I mean, this you look at his performance today, and you look at what he did today on this big stage. I mean, this is a huge, big stage, and he was ready for it. He was built for it. I mean, 22 for 31, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns passing. So he was doing his thing there. Another 51 yards on the ground. So he had a complete performance. And here's the most important thing. And here's the most important number. No turnovers from Jayden Daniels. Did not turn the ball over. And when you're in the playoffs, and a lot of people talk about Jalen Hurts and complain about Jalen Hurts, and they talk about his numbers and aren't big and this, that, and the third. But here's one thing Jalen Hurts has not done, and that's turn the football over, right? And so he puts his team, the Philadelphia Eagles, who have an elite defense, he puts his team and keeps his team in position to win. He doesn't have any negative plays, which puts his team behind. Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the ball over, and that is why the Eagles are where they're at, right? Because he doesn't turn the ball over. So turnovers are big. And so Jared Goff had 4 turnovers. I mean, 3 interceptions, and a fumble. So 4 total turnovers. And again, when you have these turnovers in the other team's territory, that's not good, right? That because you're on the verge of scoring and you have a negative play, which impacts your team and ultimately hurts your ability to win. I mean, just look at the turnovers, right? The turnover, the interception before halftime. You had at least 3 points there, right? So instead of going into the break being down by 10, you go into the break possibly, right, being down by 7. So you put yourself in position there to possibly win the game and keep yourself going. You have the pick 6. That was huge. That pick 6, again, that was you had an interception there, and that's tough. You can't do that in that spot. You cannot. And again, the fumble was big in Commanders territory. You probably score if you don't fumble the ball there in that spot. So again, the turnovers were huge in this one. And when you get to this stage, right, there's not much separating 2 teams in the playoffs at this point. Once you get to this stage, there's not much separation. But when you turn the ball over 5 times, it becomes very difficult to win. You can't win when you turn the ball over at that rate. It's not going to work. It's a bad recipe, and it's going to cost you games. And it cost the it cost the Lions this game and that magical season, 15 wins, which was a team record, right? You got home field advantage. You got everything you asked for, everything you wanted, and you lose in the divisional round to the Washington Commanders. So, and we can talk about the Lions in terms of the injuries. And yes, maybe their best defensive player, Aiden Hutchinson, was on the sidelines. Yes, that may be true. That may be all well and true, all well and good. But the reality is when you win 15 games, you know how hard it is to win 15 games in the NFL? It's very difficult to win 15 games in this league. So when you win games in this league, when you have home field advantage throughout, guess what you have to do? You got to capitalize. You got to find a way to get the job done. You got to find a way to get to the Super Bowl. You have to find ways. And the Detroit Lions couldn't find a way because they turned the ball over so many times. It's not it's a recipe for disaster to turn the ball over 5 times and expect to win. I mean, the Commanders actually did it. They actually did it against the Eagles, where they turned the ball over 5 times and actually won the game. Now, granted, Jalen Hurts was injured in that particular contest, and there was other variables as well. But at the end of the day, you won a game with 5 after committing 5 turnovers. Again, that's not what usually happens in this league. Turnovers is what separates teams. Mistakes is what separates teams. And the Commanders took advantage of the mistakes by Jared Goff. And we could say what Jared Goff is. I mean, he's been to a Super Bowl with the Rams. He won 15 games this year, which is impressive. He's put up some decent numbers this season. But when you turn the ball over 4 times. When 3 of those 4 turnovers are in Commanders territory, when one of those turnovers is a pick six, guess what? All that is a recipe for disaster. All that prevents you from winning, and all that gets you knocked out in the first round or a divisional round of the playoffs. It's just that simple. Pretty simple. And now the Detroit Lions, obviously, you know, you have Dan Campbell who took this team and has changed the culture here in Detroit. Took them to the NFC Championship game last year. And then, you know, this season, 15 wins. You were able to keep Ben Johnson, your standout offensive coordinator. Not so sure you'll be able to do that again. That might be difficult, might be a tall order. There are some jobs out there that may have Ben Johnson's name on it. But they were able to keep him last year. Maybe they keep him again. We'll see. Who knows? But you got to walk away. And Detroit was they were super excited in Detroit, right? Because they haven't had a lot of success in Detroit. Still haven't made it to a Super Bowl, right? They haven't had a lot of success in the Motor City. It's just that simple. They haven't. But guess what? They had success this year. Guess what? They won 15 games this year. They had everything going through Ford Field. Anybody who wanted to go to the NFC Championship game or go to the Super Bowl in the NFC ultimately had to go through Detroit. So we thought, at least for the divisional round, right? But now that divisional round, they lost, and now they're eliminated, and the season is over. It's over in Detroit, and that's a tough blow because, again, I said this before, I'll say it again, it's difficult to win in the NFL, and it's difficult to win 15 games in this league. I mean, but unfortunately, and for Detroit, health was not on their side, especially on the defensive end where they were just ravaged by injuries. A lot of their top guys on defense were injured, but still, you got 15 wins, and I contend that if you don't turn the ball over 5 times, you may win. You probably win this game. If you don't turn the ball over 5 times, you're definitely in position to win, better than you were now in that game. But you may have won if you don't turn the ball over 5 times. And so they got to live with that. They got to deal with that. And I felt like when he fumbled, when Goff fumbled there, and they were moving the ball and they were deep in Commanders territory, I felt like they had an opportunity. And it was still early, but I thought they had an opportunity to take command of the game. I really did think they had an opportunity at that moment, at that point, at that time to take control. I thought they had that chance there to take control. And Goff fumbles. I mean, he loses the ball, he fumbles. They're up 7-3. They're deep in Commanders territory, and he fumbles the ball. I mean, it was 31 at the Washington 17-yard line. You're up 7-3. If you score there, you're up 14-3. You're in control at that point. You're in control in the first quarter. You'll be up 14-3, and then he fumbles the ball there. Struggles with the ball security at that point. And the Commanders, you do want to call them Reds, but they are the Commanders. At that point, they recovered the ball, and that, to me, changed the momentum of that game. Commanders the Lions had an opportunity there to take control, and turnovers changed everything. Had an opportunity to take control of that game. If you're up 14-3, I'm not saying that's the game, but I'm saying, momentum is on your side, and I'm saying you're in control. I'm not saying you're winning, but I'm saying you're in control. So you fumble, right? Commanders get the ball back, and ultimately they go down the field and they score a touchdown. They get the job done, score a touchdown there on their next drive, and instead of being up 14-3, you now trail 10-7. And so that's huge. That's big. And you got to protect the football if you're Goff. You do. You got to protect the football. in that spot. And here's why you have to even more so protect the football, because your defense is depleted. Your defense is not what it once was. Your defense is not playing at a high level. So you're struggling on defense. So when you're struggling on defense, you got to put your defense in the best possible position to be successful. And one of the ways to put your defense in the best possible position to be successful is by scoring a bunch of points on the offensive side of the ball. That's how you help your defense. You also help your defense by not having turnovers. That's how you help your defense as well. And again, that was a big spot there. That was a big spot because, again, 14-3 is a lot different than 10-7. So that was a big spot there. And a credit to Jayden Daniels, credit to the Washington Commanders, credit to them. Detroit did score on their next possession. And again, but if you don't have that fumble in that spot, that is huge. So that was huge. And then the pick six obviously goes without saying. That's huge. Goff there takes a big hit by Frankie Louvu. And you thought maybe Goff could be done, but he was able to be okay. He didn't have a concussion. So he was good. He was fine. He was okay. And he came back. And then near the end of the half, right? Another opportunity for the Detroit Lions, to put themselves in position where, okay, instead of trailing 31-21 at the break, you could maybe be trailing 31-24, or if you score on that drive, score a touchdown, it's 31-28. So again, a different ball game going into halftime. So again, and turnovers. So 5 times, right? Let me say it 5 times. Turnovers. Okay, 5 times. I got that 5 times. So 5 turnovers by the Detroit Lions. And you can't win. You can't win when you turn the ball over like that. It's just really that simple. It's so simplistic. When you think about it, you can't turn the ball over 5 times and expect to win. I don't care where you're playing. I don't care if you're home, away, neutral site. I don't care where you're at, your own house. You turn the ball over that many times, more often than not, you're losing games. More often than not, you're losing the game. And the Detroit Lions lost the game because they couldn't protect the football. And you got to point directly and squarely at the quarterback. And the quarterback is Jared Goff. And again, turnovers, you can't do it. You cannot do it. You can't do it and expect the outcome to go the way you want it to go and expect the outcome to be good. It's that simple. It really is. And so the Lions season is over. 15 wins, 15-2. A lot of great wins throughout, but at the end of the day, it ends in this fashion. And that's got to be a heartbreak. If you're a Lions fan, you're probably heartbroken at this point. You're probably sad. And you got to go out there in that cold weather in Detroit. You got to deal with the elements out there. So you go into a game, you're happy, you're excited, ecstatic about the possibilities. You have a chance, an opportunity to get to your first Super Bowl. Everything was set up for you. Everything was set up for you to go to the Super Bowl. You had home field advantage throughout. You got a big-time offense. Everything was set up for you, right? You beat up on the Minnesota Vikings in Week 18 to get that home field advantage. And throughout the course of the year, everybody kept saying, you know what? Eagles, Lions. That's what we're going to see in the NFC Championship. We're going to see the Eagles against the Lions. That's what we're going to see. Buckle up, get ready, because that's what's going to happen. And guess what? That's not happening. And the Lions could not take care of their end of the deal. And we have to see if the Eagles will take care of their end of the deal tomorrow. Could be some interesting conditions in terms of snow out there in Philadelphia, Lincoln Financial Field. So that should make things interesting. But I do believe the Eagles will win. I do believe the Eagles will be successful. In fact, I think the Eagles might even blow the Los Angeles Rams out. I think the Rams were riding high in terms of working off the emotion of the unfortunate situation, unfortunate wildfires out there in Los Angeles. Prayers out to those people out there in Los Angeles dealing with that. But I think the Rams were riding high off of that. And so ultimately, riding high off of that, I think it helped them in their game against the Minnesota Vikings. Now they go cross country to Philadelphia, and I think whatever magic they may have gotten from that, whatever mojo, whatever momentum, whatever they got from that, I don't think it'll work against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts will play much better. I think Saquon Barkley, who had 255 yards against the Rams in their first matchup, I think he's going to be dominant. The Eagles dominated both sides of the ball in terms of the line of scrimmage in the first game out there in Los Angeles, where they won in dominant fashion. And I expect them to win in dominant fashion tomorrow out there in Lincoln Financial Field. Hurts will play better. Barkley will have a big game, and the defense, which they have done all year long, except for early on in the season, will step up and be big time. So I think ultimately the Washington Commanders will be playing the Philadelphia Eagles for a third time this season. And I do believe that ultimately, and we'll see what happens. And I'm not going to make a prediction now, but I have my thoughts. But I do believe that, the Commanders will come to Philly. And I do believe that it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. But I think, give the Commanders credit, right? Give them credit. Their season, the moment the Washington Commanders made it to the playoffs, their season was a success, right? It was a success the moment they clinched the playoff spot when they beat the Atlanta Falcons. That's when we said, okay, the 2024 Washington Commanders were a success. That was a successful season for the Washington Commanders. That's what we said after that win. Now, obviously, you go in there, you go into Tampa Bay, you beat the Buccaneers. All right, now you're adding to what was a successful season. And now, you go into Detroit and you beat the number one seed in the NFC, and now you're in the NFC title game. And again, no one expected that. No one expected that. If you did expect that, if you said you did expect that, I'm going to have to call you a liar. So again, no one expected the Commanders to be where they're at today, but they're here. And guess what? And they have an opportunity to get the job done. And we can say, well, they got a young football team, this, that, and the third. But when you have an opportunity to break through, when you have an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, I don't care if you're young, old, whatever, you got to get the job done. And so they have an opportunity, they have a chance. Because you always think, okay, when you're a rookie and you have the level of success Jayden Daniels is having, you expect it to keep going and going and going. Sometimes you expect it to keep going and going and going because you don't know any better. But then reality starts to hit. And then reality says that you're not going to be able to go to the playoffs every year. You're not going to be able to get to the NFC Championship game every year. You're not going to have this opportunity every year. So when you get this opportunity, you got to seize the moment because opportunities, as Eminem would say, only come once in a lifetime. So the reality is when you have a moment, you got to lose yourself and get the job done and try to find a way to get the job done and try to find a way to break through, try to find a way to win a championship. I will say this again. I said it before. I'll say it again. You look at the Commanders, and I'm not saying they're Destiny's Child. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're Beyonce. I'm not saying they're Kelly. I'm not saying they're Michelle. I'm not saying they are Destiny's Child. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that there's some magic there. The magic is there. It's magical. It's interesting what's going on in Washington. It's interesting what's going on in D.C. It's interesting how they were able to do what they're doing. This is interesting. And it's darn near shocking. But guess what? They're here. And I will say for them, the matchup, if I'm the Commanders, I'd rather play the Rams. Because I think the Eagles are better than the Rams. But at the same time, if you're the Commanders, are you afraid of the Eagles? No, probably not. You did beat them once. And you were competitive in the game in Philadelphia. So why would you be afraid of that? Are you afraid of the Eagles? No. You come in there with no fear. You're playing with no fear, and you're going to all these different places with no fear, right? There's not fear in the heart there's not fear in the heart of Dan Quinn. There's no fear in Washington. They don't have any fear. And maybe they just don't know any better to have fear, but they don't have any fear. So they're playing like a team, like we belong. Yeah, we belong. Say what you will about what we were expected to do. This is what we've done. This is what we've done. We won 12 games. We won two playoff games. We are in the NFC Championship game. So we've done that. We're here. We are here. And again, we'll see what that looks like. We'll see what that looks like, and we'll see how can they keep this magic going. Jayden Daniels, man, he's special, and the Commanders were very fortunate to get their hands on. They were very fortunate that things worked out for them, where they were able to get their hands on a legitimate, big time, special quarterback. At this point, it does seem special. Like I'll say this right when RG3 was doing what RG3 was doing in his rookie year, a lot of us probably figured, you know what, Commanders have finally found their franchise quarterback. Probably all were saying that at that time, right? But we all know what happened with RG3. Got hurt, and ultimately his career was never what many thought it could be or many thought it would be. So that's that. But you look at Jayden Daniels, and maybe this is different, and hopefully it is different. You want guys to have success. You want guys to put some things together and make things happen. You want Jayden Daniels to have the success that he's having, and you want Jayden Daniels to continue to have the success. I mean, he's good. It's good for the league. He's playing, and just he's smooth. He's just a smooth player. Jayden Daniels is smooth. Smooth as the other side of the pillow, as they like to say, right? I mean, he is smooth. And he just glides, and he always goes straight. He always goes forward. He's always going forward. He's always making positive situations out of negative. He's always finding ways, and he throws a beautiful ball. I mean, that one ball to Damani Brown where he had his eyes covered. I mean, it went right in the breadbasket. Like, so he's throwing the ball at an elite level, and he's just making play after play after play after play. Here's what I'll say. If they do play the Philadelphia Eagles, which I expect them to do, the defense of Philadelphia is much different than what we saw with the Lions. Like, the Eagles are big time on the defensive end. They're big time. They get after the quarterback. They stop the run. They are big time, absolutely big time in Philadelphia Eagles defense. So the reality is, when Jayden Daniels comes to Philadelphia, which I think will happen, it's going to be a different situation. The atmosphere is going to be just as tough, probably tougher in Philadelphia. The team, the Eagles, are going to be better than what the Lions displayed here. The Eagles don't turn the ball over. Jalen Hurts, for whatever, we talk negative about Jalen Hurts in terms of what numbers he's putting up, but he doesn't turn the ball over. Only 5 interceptions this year, only 10 total turnovers, and most of those turnovers were in the first 4 weeks of the season. So he's not turning the ball over. He's made it his business, Jalen Hurts, to not turn the ball over. That's the business that's what he's done. He says, you know what? After the bye week, whatever he did, he made it to turn. And the Eagles decided they were going to run the ball a little more, which they did. And he did not turn the ball over. He protected the football, and he protected the football at a high level. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So we got Barry Pruitt. Barry, how are you, sir? Yeah, they are. But if the Generals give Daniel enough time, he will make the Eagles pay. Yes, he can. He will. It's possible. But I feel like this Eagles defense is a lot different than this Lions defense. And you remember the time that the Eagles played the Commanders, and when Jalen Hurts got hurt there early in the first quarter. I feel like the Eagles were on the verge of blowing them out in that particular game. Clearly, it didn't happen, but I felt like they were. But anyway, Eagles did create 5 turnovers in that game. They had 5 turnovers in that particular contest. So they forced 5 turnovers, and if Devontae Smith, and I know if buts, pretzels, and nuts, we have a great party. But if Devontae Smith secures the ball there and makes that reception, that's a ball game. Eagles win that game. So, and you also argue when they played in Philadelphia, if the Commanders they had a big fourth down there, if they get that big fourth down there deep in Eagles territory when they were trailing 13-12, and then guess what? Then maybe that's a different game. So it's a lot of ifs and buts, but I just feel like the Eagles are just better. I feel like the Eagles are better. And but the Eagles got to handle their business tomorrow. Or today, I should say. It is 12-19 here on the East Coast. So, but anyway, the Eagles got to handle their business if they want to play the Commanders for a third time. That's the bottom line. But give the Commanders a lot of credit. They give them a lot of credit. They came into a difficult environment and they dominated. They dominated. They look like the number one seed. They look like the team that won 15 games this year. And if you also look at the NFC North at this point, right? I mean, you had the Commanders, you had the Lions who won 15, you had the Vikings that won 14, and you had the Packers, I believe, who won 11. And now all three of those teams are out of the playoffs. None of them won a game. And here's also the thing: if the Eagles lose tomorrow, well, guess what? The 15-win team in the NFC and the 2 wins in the NFC would be out of the playoffs, right? That's if the Eagles lose tomorrow. And I don't expect that to happen. But if anything's possible, hey, it's football, right? But if that happens, you're like, wow, well, the NFC North was so big and so bad, and we expected the Vikings to make a deep run, and we expected the Lions to make a deep run, and we all were talking about how dangerous the Packers are. And all those teams at this point, at this moment, at this time, are headed to Cabo somewhere or planning some type of vacation somewhere or possibly playing in the Pro Bowl, right? Nobody wants to play in the Pro Bowl because that means you are out of the playoffs. So maybe that's what they're going to be doing. Maybe that's what they're planning for. But I know one thing: they're not planning to play next week. That's one thing for sure they're not doing. They're not planning to play next week. That's not happening. That's one thing for certain, one thing for sure, and that's one thing that is guaranteed. And you look at the Commanders and you look at the Commanders, and the Eagles do play the Rams tomorrow at Lincoln Financial Field. It's so interesting how things happen and how they were able to put themselves in this position. But one thing about the Washington Commanders and Dan Quinn, he don't like kickers. Right? He don't like punters. He don't like kickers. He's aggressive, and he was aggressive in this game, and he's been aggressive all year long. And so that puts a lot of pressure on your defense when you have to play 4 downs instead of 3. So he's going to put pressure on your defense. And Jayden Daniels is tough. He's tough because he can beat you with his arm. He can beat you with his legs. He can beat you in multiple ways. So Jayden Daniels and the way he plays and the things that he does, he's special, and he's scary. Jayden Daniels is scary. I mean, if you're an opposing team, you are scared of the magical things that he can do, the magical things he can do with his legs, the magical things he can do with his arms, the magical things that he's doing. That is scary. That's a scary proposition for any defensive coordinator and any defense out there. It's scary. He makes plays. He gets the job done. He does special things. That's scary. And the way he's playing clearly it's the rookie of the year, and clearly he's playing like a poised veteran. He's playing like he's done this for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. He's playing like he's been in the playoffs for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Like he's playing like this is nothing new to him. That's the way he's playing. And it's fun to watch. Jayden Daniels is fun to watch. He really is fun to watch. He is enjoyable. The way he's playing, the elite level that he's playing at, it's enjoyable to watch. It's fun to see. And it's good for the Commanders who've struggled over the years. We got new ownership in Josh Harris, who also owns the Philadelphia 76ers, which is interesting. But he's going to be, if the Commanders come to Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Josh Harris is going to be public enemy number one. Who cares if he owns the Sixers? And the Sixers are struggling right now. So even more so, who cares? Eagles fans don't care. He's public enemy number one when he brings those Commanders to Lincoln Financial Field. If he brings those Commanders to Lincoln Financial Field, he's public enemy number one. And the thing also is the way things worked out for going back to the Eagles, from the way things worked out for them, the second seed ended up being the better seed for them, because now, again, they have an opportunity to get home field advantage, and they avoid the Commanders for now. But not to say the Eagles would have lost the Commanders, but still, they get home. They have an opportunity to get the NFC Championship game at Lincoln Financial Field. And for me, that bodes well for the Eagles to get that game in their own building. That's a recipe for success for the Eagles. So we'll see what happens now. The Chiefs handled their business early on. Patrick Mahomes and those boys got the job done. A lot of favorable calls in that game, a lot of interesting calls. A lot of people criticizing the referees for how that game was officiated and some of the personal foul calls and everything. But anyway, the Chiefs move on. The Commanders handle their business. Now we'll see what happens tomorrow with the Eagles, Rams, and also Bills, Ravens. Also, two solid matchups. Should be interesting. Should be a great day of football out there in Lincoln Financial Field, and also out there in Buffalo. So it's the playoffs are heating up. This is fun. This is exciting. And we're now getting down to the get down, and we're getting down to who to we'll figure out who's going to go to the Super Bowl. We'll figure out who's going to be in the NFC and AFC championship games tomorrow. And we'll figure out what the following week. We'll figure out who's going to be in the Super Bowl. And 2 weeks later, we figure out who's going to be the world champion 2024 in the National Football League. So we'll figure that part out soon enough. So again, great win by the Commanders, able to get the job done, able to go into Detroit to put up 45 points, a 45-point burger against the Detroit Lions. And now we'll see what happens. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It should be fun. We will see the Rams in the championship. Interesting, huh? Maybe. I don't think so, but anything is possible. Maybe they'll ride that wave. A lot of support, a lot of people loving on Los Angeles right now, and maybe that gives them an extra motivation to win it for the people of Los Angeles who are suffering right now in terms of with the wildfires and everything. So maybe that could propel this team against the Philadelphia Eagles tomorrow. I don't think so. I really don't. I just think the Eagles are better. I think the Eagles are just a better team, and I think they showed it in the regular season. And I don't know how much that means, but they dominated the Rams in the regular season, and I think the Eagles ultimately will dominate the Rams tomorrow. And I think the Eagles ultimately will get to the NFC Championship game. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens tomorrow out there in Philadelphia. There will be snow. We'll see how much snow. You're seeing different forecasts. You're seeing a possibility of 2 to 4 inches out there in Philadelphia. So that may have an impact. That probably will have some impact on how the game is played tomorrow. You figure the way the Eagles are built, a big-time running game, big-time offensive line, and a big-time defense, that tends to work out well for in a snowy situation and with bad weather. Defense and a running game tend to be two good things that work out. Whether when it's bad weather and you have a running game, you have a big time defense, things usually go your way in that situation. And the Eagles have those two things that travel, that goes anywhere. You could take that anywhere. You could take it to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. With a big time defense and a big time running game, you take that anywhere in the world, and you have the success that you want to have. Usually, it usually works out in your favor. So we'll see how this works out for the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see if that running game will be what it's been throughout the course of this season. Saquon Barkley, 2K club. 119 yards last week against the Packers. And then we'll see what Saquon Barkley does this week against the Rams. I'm expecting another big time performance from Barkley, and I'm expecting a big time performance. We'll see what the weather looks like, but I think Hurts is going to be big time in his own little way. He's going to be effective in his own little way. And I just think the Eagles are built for what the weather could be tomorrow. And I think the Eagles are just built to make a deep, long playoff run. And I think the Eagles are built to get to the Super Bowl. And I think the Eagles are built to win a Super Bowl. I just think they're built for that. We'll see. We could be built for a lot of things, but ultimately you got to execute. People are built for many things, but if you don't execute, it don't mean a thing. And the Eagles ultimately have to execute today out there in Philadelphia. So we'll see what happens there. So again, the Detroit Lions season is over. 15 wins, 15 big wins. Just a lot of happy vibes out there in Detroit. But Dan Campbell, everybody loves Dan Campbell. I just, at the end of the day, we can love Dan Campbell, and a lot of people do. We can love the story of the Detroit Lions, and a lot of people did. But when you turn the ball over the way they turned the ball over today, which is 5 times, when your quarterback has 4 turnovers, 3 in Commanders territory, when you do all that, there's a good chance you're not going to win. It's just that simple. You throw a pick 6. I mean, there's a good chance you're going to lose. And that's what happened. They lost because they didn't protect the football. It's that simple. We can talk about the Lions' injuries, and they had a myriad of injuries on the defensive end of the football defensive end. But when it's all said and done, when you have an opportunity in your own building to get the job done, when you win 15 games, when you do all that, that has to be you got to cash in your chips. You got to get a Super Bowl. You got to win a Super Bowl. You got to at least get to the Super Bowl. You got to at least get to the Super Bowl when you do that. You really do. And the Lions didn't do that. They didn't do that. And it's just it's a franchise that hasn't had a lot of success, and a franchise that hasn't been to a Super Bowl. And now it's a franchise that goes home in the divisional round after having home field advantage throughout the course of these playoffs, or having the opportunity to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. But ultimately, they couldn't handle what they needed to handle. They couldn't do what they needed to do, and we'll see. Here's an interesting thing. Dan Campbell has done some great things in Detroit. Dan Campbell, has put this team in position to be very successful. Dan Campbell has had a lot of success. NFC Championship game last year, 15 wins this year, divisional round. But you got Ben Johnson there, and Ben Johnson is everybody loves Ben Johnson, and he's everybody's favorite candidate to be somebody's coaching, to be a coach of somebody's favorite team, right? He's that guy. And so, if you're the Lions, say, you know what, I don't want to lose Ben Johnson. So, in order for me not to lose Ben Johnson, I got to elevate him to the head coaching spot. Do you do that if you're the Lions? Do you make that decision? Can you do that? Can you fire Dan Campbell after 15 wins? Can you fire Dan Campbell after changing the whole environment and atmosphere in Detroit? Can you fire Dan Campbell after all the things that he's done in Detroit? Can you fire him? Because it is when you win 15 games and you have a home field advantage, you lose the division round. There's some, it's kind of inexcusable in a lot of ways. There's to a degree, it's kind of inexcusable. To a degree, it's kind of unacceptable. To a degree, it's not something that should happen. To a degree, right? You are supposed to at least, I feel like you get home field advantage. You're supposed to at least get to the NFC, your championship title game, to the championship game, AFC or NFC. You're supposed to get to the championship game when you have home field advantage. That's what you're supposed to do. That is what's supposed to happen. So is Dan Campbell now? Do you think about, does Dan Campbell should he be fearing for his job? Should I mean, because Ben Johnson is there, and you might say, well, I know Ben Johnson's an elite offensive coordinator. You might say, well, I don't think he can be an elite head coach. Maybe you're thinking that. Or maybe you're thinking Ben Johnson's an elite offensive coordinator. I think he can be an elite head coach, right? Maybe you think that. I don't know. But we'll see what happens in Detroit. I mean, shocked, surprised, and amazed if Dan Campbell were to get fired. But and I don't think it's happening, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. We'll see what happens going forward, but I just thought I'd throw it out there in terms of Dan Campbell. I doubt it'll happen. I'll be shocked, amazed, and surprised. But hey, you lose with the way he lost in this game. It's tough. It's tough. But anyway, credit to the Washington Commanders. Credit to Jayden Daniels. Credit to Dan Quinn. Credit to that football team. Credit to that defense for creating and forcing 5 turnovers. Credit to them. Credit to them for all the things that they've done and all the things and the way they were performed today, right? Yeah, they probably would be stupid to fire Dan Campbell, but who knows? Maybe they believe Ben Johnson could be a better head coach. Who knows? But anyway, Washington did what they needed to do in this game. And when you create 5 turnovers, you put yourself in a great position to win. When your quarterback doesn't have any turnovers, you put yourself in position to win. When your quarterback plays the way Jayden Daniels did with over 300 yards of total offense, and no turnovers, and just playing proficient and playing efficient and playing all those things. When he does all those things, you put yourself in position to win. And that's what the Washington Commanders did today. They put themselves in position to win. And that's a credit to Daniels. That's a credit to Quinn. That's a credit to the organization. They did enough today, and they made play after play after play after play. And then on both sides of the ball. And that was why the Washington Commanders defeated the Detroit Lions 45-31. And that's also why the Washington Commanders have advanced to the NFC Championship game, where they await the winner of the Philadelphia Eagles Los Angeles Rams, which takes place tomorrow at Lincoln Financial Field out there in Philadelphia. So we'll see what happens. Will the Commanders play the Eagles for a third time, or will the Commanders travel to Los Angeles or Arizona, wherever they're going to play against the Rams? We shall see. But I think the Eagles will get the job done tomorrow, and I think they'll do it easily. And I think ultimately they'll be playing the Commanders next week out there in Philly. And we'll see what happens. Should be fun, should be exciting. And we'll see what happens. Make sure you make sure you subscribe to the channel, support the channel. Make sure, we'll be back tomorrow. Gonna come back tomorrow, talk some more football. Again, exciting football out there. A lot of great things happening in the National Football League. And we're going to continue talking about that tomorrow. So we're getting out of here. See you later. Take care. Enjoy yourself. Like I said, subscribe, support the channel. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Take care. Later.